Right now, you are the only kind of human on Earth. Look around, every person you've ever met, every face in every crowd, all of them are the same kind of human as you. That feels normal. It feels like it could never have been any other way. But it's strange, really strange, because for almost all of our history, this was not true. There were others, not apes, not monsters, other humans, different kinds of people, walking the same earth at the same time as us. You could have met one, and then, one by one, they vanished, until only we were left. So here's the question that should keep you up tonight. What happened to all the other humans? Let's start with a picture that feels wrong. Imagine the Earth around 50,000 years ago. Our kind is here, tall, thin, restless. The same face you see in the mirror. But we are not alone. Over in Europe, there's another kind of human. Shorter than us, stronger than us, wide shoulders, a heavy brow, a big nose. We call them Neanderthals. Far to the east in the cold caves of Siberia, there's a third kind of human. We barely know their faces. We call them Denisovans. And on a small island called Flores, in what's now Indonesia, there's a fourth kind. Tiny, fully grown, and only about as tall as a young child, with a brain the size of an orange. People nickname them the Hobbits. Now stop and let that sink in. 4 different kinds of human, all alive, all at the same time, sharing one planet. It sounds like a fantasy story. It isn't. It's just history. So, who were they really? Let's start with the ones we know best, the Neanderthals. Forget the caveman cartoon, the grunting brute dragging a club. That picture is wrong. Neanderthals were smart. They made tools. They controlled fire. They wore clothing against the ice. They buried their dead. They cared for their sick and their old. There's even a cave in Spain with red marks on the wall, made long before our own kind was painting in Europe. They had big brains, at least as big as ours. Let that sit for a second. Their skulls held as much as yours. They lived across Europe and Western Asia for a very long time, hundreds of thousands of years, far longer than our kind has even existed. They were not a failed version of us. They were a whole other way of being human, and it worked for ages. Now to the ghosts, the Denisovans. Here's the wild part. We found them almost by accident. In a cave in Siberia, someone dug up a tiny piece of a finger bone, just a chip. Scientists pulled the DNA out of it, and it didn't match us. And it didn't match Neanderthals. It was someone new, a whole kind of human, discovered from a fragment you could hide under your thumbnail. We still have barely any of their bones. A finger, a few teeth, a piece of a jaw. We know they were real, mostly because their code is still hiding inside living people today. We'll come back to that. It matters. And then there are the hobbits of Flores. These are the ones that break my brain. On that one island, a kind of human ended up tiny. Grown adults, maybe 3.5 feet tall. Their brains were small, close to the size of a chimp's. And yet, tools have been found on the island and signs of fire and hunting. Small heads, real lives. On an island hidden away, getting by just fine. And they weren't the only small ones. On another island in the Philippines, there was yet another mysterious kind of human. The more we dig, the more of them we find. So, the real world, not so long ago, was full of humans, many kinds, spread across many places, and that changes how you should picture the whole story. We tend to imagine a neat line, an ape at one end, you at the other, a tidy march forward, one step at a time. But that's wrong. It was never a line. It was a tree. A wide branching tree with many kinds of human growing at once. Some branches were tall, some were tiny, some lived in the ice, some on warm green islands. For most of the story, this tree was full and busy, leaves everywhere. And then, almost all at once in the long view, nearly every branch went bare, except one, ours. And that leads to a question you might not have thought of yet. Did we ever meet? Did our kind and their kind ever stand face to face? The answer is yes. And we can prove it, in the most personal way possible, because you are probably carrying a piece of them right now. Here's what we found. When our kind spread out of Africa, we walked straight into the others, into Neanderthal land, into Denisovan land, and we did what humans do. We met, we mixed, we had children together. Try to picture that first meeting. 2 small bands in a cold forest, catching sight of each other across the trees. not quite the same, but not so different either, both walking upright, both carrying spears, both watching the other with careful eyes. They couldn't have shared many words, but somehow, again and again, they didn't just fight, they joined. We know this because their DNA is still inside us. If your family roots are outside Africa, a small slice of your DNA, roughly a couple of percent, came from Neanderthals. Read that again? Not a cousin of yours. You. There is Neanderthal in your body, in your skin. Maybe in how you fight off a cold, maybe in how you sleep. And some people, especially across parts of Asia and the Pacific, carry Denisovan DNA too. There's a group living high in the mountains of Tibet, and a gene that helps them breathe that thin, cold air seems to have come from Denisovans, a gift handed down from a kind of human that's been gone for tens of thousands of years. So the other humans didn't fully disappear. Part of them lives on, quietly, inside billions of people. Inside, quite possibly, you. But that only makes the mystery sharper. If we met them and mixed with them, and they were smart and strong and had been surviving for ages, then where do they all go? Why is it just us now? This is where the honest answer starts. And the honest answer is, we don't fully know. And here's something worth sitting with. It could easily have been us instead. Our own kind came close to the edge too. There were long, hard stretches when our numbers dropped low, when a bit more bad luck could have wiped us out and left the earth to someone else. We're not here because we were destined to be. We're here in part because we got lucky, but we do have pieces. So let's walk through them. The first piece is time. The others didn't all vanish in one night. This wasn't a single disaster. The Neanderthals faded out around 40,000 years ago. The hobbits of Flores, somewhere in that same long window. One by one, over thousands of years, they thinned out and were gone. And here's the eerie part. That's right around the time our kind was spreading into their lands. We showed up, and soon after, they didn't. Which brings us to the hard question. Was it us? Let's be careful here. Because nobody was there with a camera. There's no proof of some great war. No pile of evidence that we hunted them all down. But we didn't have to. There are quieter ways for a people to disappear. Here's one. We may have simply outcompeted them. Picture two kinds of human hunting the same deer, in the same cold valley, in the same hungry winter. If our kind had even a small edge, better tools, wider trade, bigger groups, more sharing of ideas, then, over enough hard winters, that edge adds up. We might not have fought them. We might have just been standing in the same doorway, reaching for the same food, and slowly leaving less and less for them. And there may have been another quiet weapon, one nobody meant to carry, sickness. When two groups that have lived apart for ages finally meet, each one carries germs the other has never faced. We've seen this happen in our own recorded history. A new people arrives, and a sickness they barely notice tears through the ones who've never met it before. Something like that may have played out in the deep past, too. No spears needed, just a cough in the wrong valley at the wrong time. Here's another piece. There may never have been many of them to begin with. The Neanderthals, spread thin across a huge cold land, were probably never a large people. Small groups, far apart. Small groups are fragile. A few bad years, a sickness, a run of children who don't survive, and a group can simply wink out. Do that across enough scattered bands, over enough centuries, and a whole kind of human quietly runs out. And here's a third piece. The gentlest one, and maybe the strangest. Some of them didn't die out at all. They were absorbed. Remember the DNA inside you. Every time our kind and their kind had a child, a little of them crossed over into us. Do that again and again for thousands of years, and a small separate people can slowly melt into a larger one, not wiped out, not killed off, just blended in until there was no separate them left. Only a slightly changed us. The truth is probably a mix of all of these. Competition, fragile numbers, blending in, maybe bad luck, and a changing climate on top. No single villain, just a slow, quiet closing of a door that had been open for a very long time. And then, one day, it was shut. Now, here's the thought I can't shake. For most of the human story, being human did not mean being alone. If you'd been born 50,000 years ago, you might have looked across a valley and seen smoke from a fire, lit by a kind of human that wasn't yours. You'd have grown up knowing you were one of several, one kind of people among others. We are the first humans in a very long time to be the only ones. And we barely notice. We treat it as the natural state of things. Of course we're alone. Who else would be here? But it's brand new. It's the exception, not the rule. We are the last ones standing at the end of a very long, very crowded family story. And we're standing here by ourselves, without fully knowing why the others are gone. So, think back to that crowded Earth, the strong ones in the cold north, the ghost people in the Siberian caves, the tiny hunters on their green island. Every one of them woke up in the morning, felt the sun, loved their children, feared the dark. They were people, just not our kind of people. They had names for each other, surely, jokes maybe, songs we will never hear, whole ways of living worked out over thousands of years that ended without a single word written down. And now they're gone, all of them, and only we remain. So, the next time you're in a crowd, a busy street, a packed train, a room full of faces, remember that every single one of them is the same kind of human as you. That used to be impossible. We didn't always have this planet to ourselves. We just happen to be the ones who are still here.